Okay, in this video we're going to work on target 3, which is writing the equation for a quadratic function. Okay, so that is our essential question. How do I write the equation for a quadratic function? Our first step is to find the vertex. So when you're looking at a table, you're going to look for the smallest x value. Okay, that's the point where the graph turns and is our vertex. When you're looking at a graph, it should be pretty obvious what the vertex is. So step 2, once you have the vertex, you're going to plug it into the equation y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Okay, remember that's our vertex form. So h and k are the vertex. H is our x coordinate and k is our y coordinate. Step 3 is going to be finding what our a value is. So in order to find our a value, we are going to pick any point from the table or the graph, plug it in for x and y, and then solve for a. And I'll show you exactly how we're going to do that in the next 2 slides when we do our examples. And then finally, step 4, we're going to write our final equation in vertex form, leaving x and y as variables. So the only numbers you need to plug in are a, h, and k. If you're still writing, go ahead and pause the video, and then after you're done writing, we'll keep going. Okay, so example 1. So I have a table here. When I look at my table, okay, I notice that my graph starts to turn at the point -2, -7. So if you look at my y's, you see how it goes from -27, -12, then down to -7. Then back up to -12, -27. So that tells me that -2, -7 must be my vertex, because -7 is the smallest y. That's my minimum. That's where my graph is turning. So I'm going to go ahead and plug my vertex in for h and k. So -2 is going in h's spot. Notice how it changed from minus h to plus 2. Okay, the reason why it changed to a plus is because remember, a -2 and a minus, that's 2 negatives, is going to become a positive. Then when I plug in -7 for k, again, you see how it was plus k and now it's -7? That's because my y coordinate is a -7. So now that I've plugged in h and k, I can pick an ordered pair from the graph and solve for a. So I'm going to go ahead and just use the first ordered pair, 0, -27. So I have my equation still, y equals a times x plus 2 squared minus 7. I'm going to plug in -27 for y, and I'm going to plug in 0 for x. So my new equation is -27 equals a times 0 plus 2 squared minus 7. First thing I'm going to do every time I solve for a is simplify what's inside the parentheses first. So 0 plus 2 is 2. So that makes my new equation -27 equals a times 2 squared minus 7. Now the next thing I want to do, instead of messing with the exponent, because remember we do order of operations backwards, I want to get rid of that -7. So I'm going to get rid of that -7 by adding 7 to both sides. So when I add 7 to both sides, I get -20 equals a times 2 squared. Now I can do the exponent. So 2 squared is the same thing as 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So now my equation is -20 equals 4a. Last step, I need to get a alone, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So I get that a equals -5. So when I go to my final equation, remember the only numbers you need to plug in are a, h, and k. I'm going to leave x and y as variables because remember we have multiple infinite amounts of x and y's. So my final equation for this table is going to be y equals -5 times x plus 2 squared minus 7. So if you're still writing, go ahead and just pause the video. In a moment, we'll talk about example 2, which is a graph. So example 2, again, we're going to find the vertex, which is really easy. I just look, and there it is. It's a maximum vertex at the top of my graph. It's 1, 1. So I'm going to plug that in for h and k. Since these are both positive, it's really easy. Minus h stays -1, and plus k stays +1. So my new equation is y equals a times x minus 1 squared plus 1. So now my next step is to find what a is. So I'm going to pick any ordered pair. They went ahead and already marked on my graph 3, -3. So I'm going to use that one. So my x coordinate is 3, so I'm going to plug in 3 for x. And my y coordinate is -3, so I'm going to plug in -3 for y. So my new equation is -3 equals a times 3 minus 1 squared plus 1. When you're doing that, make sure you're putting x and y in the right spot. It's really easy to flip them around. So just make sure you're paying attention to which coordinate's x and which coordinate's y. Okay, just like we did before, now we're going to simplify what's inside the parentheses. So inside my parentheses, I have 3 minus 1. So 3 minus 1 is 2. So my new equation is -3 equals a times 2 squared plus 1. Now I need to get rid of what's on the outside of the parentheses. So in order to get rid of that plus 1, I'm going to minus 1 from both sides and get -4 equals a times 2 squared. Now let's get rid of our exponent. So 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. So now I have -4 equals 4a. Last step, let's get a alone. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So a equals -1. All that's left to do is write my equation. So a is -1, h is 1, k is 1. So my equation is going to be y equals -1 times x minus 1 squared plus 1. And that's all there is to it. You're never going to have to do an equation where you can't find the vertex easily, even if it's a word problem. So if you have any questions, remember you can message me on Schoology or Remind, and you can always watch this video again.